The rain had been falling over Chicago since noon, and by the time Robert Hale stepped out of the taxi, his shoes were already soaked through. He wasn't used to this side of the city. Restaurants like this one, with its gold chandeliers and velvet booths, belonged to a world he only ever saw through glass doors he never opened. But tonight he had no choice. His daughter Emily was turning 8, and for weeks she had talked about nothing but the pictures she'd seen online of a restaurant called Le Méridien, the one with the golden lights and the tiny chocolate cakes shaped like stars. Robert had promised her, half-jokingly, that one day they would go. He never thought she'd remember. Children always remember the promises adults think they'll forget. Robert worked as a mechanic at a small garage on the edge of town. His wife had passed away 3 years ago, leaving him to raise Emily alone, and every month felt like a quiet battle between rent, groceries, and the guilt of not being able to give her more. Tonight, he had saved for weeks, skipped lunches, taken extra shifts, just so he could walk into that restaurant and watch his daughter's face light up the way it did in her dreams. But when the hostess looked him up and down, her smile faltered. "I'm sorry, sir," she said carefully. "We don't have any tables available right now. It's fully booked." Robert's heart sank. He glanced at Emily, who was still staring wide-eyed at the chandeliers, unaware of the words being exchanged. He lowered his voice. "Please, it's her birthday. Just for an hour. I don't mind waiting at the bar or a corner table, anything." The hostess hesitated, torn between policy and pity. That's when a voice interrupted from behind. "She can share my table." Robert turned. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood a few feet away, his tie loosened, a glass of water in his hand. He looked exhausted, though composed, the kind of tired. That came not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. Robert recognized him, vaguely, from a business magazine cover he'd seen once at the garage. This was Daniel Cole, the CEO of one of the largest logistics companies in the state, a man whose name appeared in headlines, not in conversations with mechanics. "That won't be necessary," Robert said quickly, embarrassed. "We can find somewhere else." But Daniel was already gesturing to the hostess. "It's fine. I'm alone anyway. There's more than enough room." Emily looked between the two of them, sensing an opportunity to see the golden lights up close, and before Robert could protest further, she was already walking toward the booth, entranced by the flicker of candle wax dripping onto silver holders. Robert sighed, half in gratitude, half in discomfort, and followed his daughter, to sit across from a man who could buy this entire restaurant without blinking. The first few minutes were quiet. Daniel studied his menu without really reading it, and Robert kept his eyes low, unsure of what to say to a man from a world so different from his own. It was Emily who broke the silence. "Are you a king?" she asked, staring at Daniel's suit. Daniel almost choked on his water, laughing for the first time that night. "No," he said. "Just someone who wears a lot of ties." "You look tired like my dad after work." Daniel's smile faded slightly, replaced by something quieter. "Yeah," he said. "I guess I am." Robert wanted to apologize for his daughter's bluntness, but Daniel waved it off. "She's right. I've had a long few months." As the night went on, the conversation slowly unfolded, not out of formality, but curiosity. Daniel asked about Robert's work, and Robert, though hesitant at first, spoke about the garage, about the customers who trusted him with their old beaten-up cars, about how satisfying it was to fix something broken and hand it back, running smoothly again. Daniel listened intently, more intently than he had listened to anyone in a long time. "You know," Daniel said after a while, "I used to work with my hands too. Before all this," he gestured vaguely to his suit, "the restaurant, the weight of his position. My father had a small hardware store. I used to help him after school, sorting nails, screws, fixing shelves for the neighbors." Robert raised an eyebrow, surprised. "What happened?" Daniel's eyes drifted toward the flickering candle between them. "He passed away when I was 22. I had to sell the store to pay off debts. I told myself I'd build something bigger, something that could never be taken away again." He paused. "I built an empire, but somewhere along the way I forgot why I started." There was a silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when two strangers realize They carry similar wounds, just wrapped in different fabric. Do you have kids? Robert asked gently. Daniel shook his head. No, never had the time. Or maybe I never made the time. He looked at Emily, who was now happily drawing on a napkin with a borrowed pen, oblivious to the depth of the conversation happening above her head. She's lucky. Whatever you don't have in money, you clearly give her in presents. Robert smiled faintly. Some nights I wonder if it's enough. It is, Daniel said almost too quickly, as if the words meant something to him beyond this moment. Trust me, it is. The cake arrived, a small chocolate dessert, with a candle stuck crookedly. In the center, courtesy of the waiter who had noticed Emily's excitement earlier. She squealed with delight, and even Daniel found himself smiling wider than he had in months. As the dinner wound down, the two men exchanged no numbers, no formalities. Daniel simply said, "Thank you for letting me sit with you tonight. I needed this more than you know." Robert nodded, still uncertain how to process everything that had happened. "Thank you for the table." They shook hands, and Daniel crouched slightly to Emily's height. "Happy birthday, little one. Never stop asking people if they're kings. Sometimes it reminds them to act like better men." Emily giggled, and Robert watched as Daniel walked out into the rain, his car waiting outside, his shoulders a little less burdened than when he'd walked in. Robert thought that would be the end of it, a strange, beautiful one-time encounter, the kind of story he'd tell Emily when she was older, about the night a stranger gave up his table and, for a moment, they were just two tired fathers from different worlds sharing the same warmth. But 3 weeks later, Robert received a call from an unknown number. It was Daniel. "I hope this isn't strange," Daniel said. "I got your number from the restaurant manager. I told him it was important." Robert, confused but intrigued, agreed to meet him the following day. It turned out that Daniel's company was expanding its fleet maintenance division, and they needed someone to help set up and manage a new garage facility. Someone who understood cars not as machines, but as things people relied on to hold their lives together. "I don't do this because I feel sorry for you," Daniel said firmly, sensing Robert's hesitation. "I do this because that night, you reminded me what it means to work with your hands, to care about something bigger than your own comfort. I need people like that in the company I'm rebuilding, the one my father would recognize." Robert took the job. It didn't erase his hardships overnight, but it gave him room to breathe, new opportunities, a fair wage, and most importantly, a chance to still be the mechanic he always was, only now with more resources to fix more things, help more people. Months passed, and every so often, Daniel would visit the garage, not as a boss checking on an employee, but as someone genuinely interested in Robert's world, a world of grease-stained hands and honest work. One evening, as winter approached, Daniel found himself at the same restaurant again, sitting at the same booth. But this time he wasn't alone. Robert and Emily sat across from him, and this time, there was no need to explain who was sharing whose table. It felt simply like family. Emily, now a little older, looked at Daniel and smiled. "Are you still tired like my dad?" Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Not as much anymore." Outside, the rain had stopped, and for the first time in years, Daniel Cole felt like he wasn't just building an empire. He was building something worth remembering. And Robert, watching his daughter laugh over cake with a man who once seemed worlds away, understood that sometimes the smallest act of kindness, an empty chair offered to a stranger, doesn't just change one night. It changes everything that comes after.